Cool. All right, let's get started. Welcome to the L2 Interop Working Group call. Drop the agenda in the chat for anyone watching the recording. It is issue 1404 in the PM repo. Cool. I think we can just jump right into things then. First off, we have Luca from the Rion team with a walkthrough of 7811.
Hey everyone, I'm gonna share my screen. Just give me one sec. Uh, cool. Um, okay, folks. So, like, before we go through the demo, I wanted to spend a bit of time talking about why. Like, we're gonna talk about 7811, but like, why did we create it in the first place? So what is 7811? Currently, dApps, when they interact with wallets, they get the assets on their own. So they query the accounts on chain state, usually by RPC or some like provider that aggregates all the data. That's how they determine the account state. This is working well until you introduce stuff like chain abstraction, which then starts to introduce problems. Why specifically? The dApp doesn't know what the wallet can do, right? So the dApp thinks, okay, I might have access, or the account has like one USDC, but the wallet knows, okay, but I can swap the assets, I can breach the assets. I might get like 10 USDC, right? Which is not reflective on the account's on-chain state. So the 7811 introduces wallet get assets, which is a simple RPC that gives the ability for wallets to declare which assets are supported by the account, not necessarily which assets are on the account's like on-chain state. Why is this important again? Short demo, like this is not the demo, this is like why it's important. I'm connected on CowSwap. I know we have folks from pretty much every DeFi project on the call, so no hard feelings. I chose this one. I have 1.5 USDC, right? So this is letting me swap. If I change to 2, it's going to say insufficient USDC balance, even though the wallet might know how to resolve this, right? But the issue is the dApp is not letting me even click this because it wants to preserve the UX. So what we did is we have this wallet here, which supports chain abstraction. This is our chain abstraction solution, which went live quite a bit of time ago, but yesterday we published a paper as well on how exactly are we doing this. So I have 3.37 USDC on Optimism, and I'm gonna switch to something like Arbitrum here, which has basically no USDC, which is great. Then I'm gonna copy my account address here, and I'm gonna go send USDC. It has available balance here of 3.4, which is the aggregate balance of my other chain. Again, like this is not my Arbitrum balance. If I go to my wallet here, which just displays the balance on this chain, it has 0.03. But the wallet knows it could get the USDC from different chains. So if I do this, and if I do this, and I go send USDC, keep in mind this is still in progress, so that's why the latency is a bit iffy. The wallet actually gets the request again on the target chain, which is Arbitrum, and is actually simulating the request, trying to parse, okay, this request does like whatever, sending USDC. Do I have this USDC? No. Do I have some other token? If yes, I can swap it and then complete the request. If I don't have the token on the chain, I have to bridge and then swap, which is what it's doing here for my optimism balance. And then if I approve, it's not swapping, it's just bridging. If I approve here, it's going to bridge first, and then it's going to complete the initial intent submitted by the dApp, which again is important because when we designed this, our chain abstraction solution, we put it in the wallet and it's completed successfully again on the dApp side. And yeah, we put our chain abstraction solution in the wallet instead of the dApp. But still, the dApp has to request something, and our premise was always minimal changes dApp side. So the dApp only declares what it wants to do on the target chain, not how, and the wallet figures out how, which may be via, I don't know, again, like swap, bridge, 7683, magic spend, whichever other solution, doesn't really matter. And 7811 gives the ability for wallet to declare, okay, if I know I have this assets, if you send a request that spends this asset, it's going to be completed. So the dApp can still preserve the nice UX, so we don't have this thingy here. So yeah, I think that's it from the demo perspective. I have no idea if we have time for questions, Josh, or do you want to handle that async or yeah,
Yeah, we could maybe do a minute or two of questions if anyone has any.
cool.
I guess one question for you really quick, Luca. Are there any asks of anyone in this group or just Interop more broadly? What are the things that would be most helpful to you?
Okay, so I know some of the folks here have been on the Interop site in Denver. I was in the what is it called? The user journey mapping group, and we discussed exactly this. So our vision here is to make 70 and 11 kind of like a counterpart to 7683. So 7683, which is going to be resolved by the wallet side, and the dApps kind of need to know that the request can be resolved. So they need something like 70 and 11. There are other like alternatives like auxiliary funds in 5792, but based on what we talked about, like with the dApps, they really do not like kind of disabling these checks, which would basically be kind of enforced by auxiliary funds.
Got it. Cool. Well, if no other
What was that
questions,
EIP number?
It's 7811. I'm gonna drop it in the chat as well.
Awesome.
and Luca, you are in the Telegram group, I believe. So if anyone has questions for you, they can find you, track you down there.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm gonna share also we have another group for 7811 specifically. If it's cool with everybody, I would like to share the link so folks can join.
Sounds great.
Cool.
Cool.
Thanks everyone.
Thanks, Luca. Up next, Chris for the want to share a few things on the Zoo Berlin Interop event.
Share my screen as well. Give me 1 second. Can you see my screen?
Perfect.
Perfect, cool. Yeah, so in June we'll have Zoo Berlin again, and it has been quite a shelling point in the ecosystem last year in terms of research and actual practical progress. For example, for pre-confirmations who launched their first DevNet there, and this time we have a huge focus on L2 interoperability. So we're working together there with Ellie from Espresso, with Luca from L2 Beat, and with the rest from T1 protocol, but also including a lot of course, the big L2s in the ecosystem, bridges across Hyperlane, wallets, and Interop protocols such as Leaf and Polymer. And topics will be, across the board, the topics we're discussing in here. But the big difference will be, of course, we come together in person. We'll have 2 full days, and then also the rest of Zoo Berlin to discuss. We'll co-create the agenda together ahead of time. We'll create a Telegram group, and it's just an invite because we want to spread as much as possible across the ecosystem and really have all of you represented there. So if you want to join, DM either me on Telegram as Chris HG. I'll also share a message and a bit of info there, or Ellie or Luca, and love as many as possible of you to join there and make it really, really practical, workshop oriented, and have some good results there together. So yeah, excited for that. That's it from my side. And yeah, if you have any questions, I'll post it on Telegram as well, and you can also DM me there.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris. Cool. We can keep going then. Next up, resource locks.
I mean, I don't have anything prepared per se. I don't know if anyone else here wanted to chat on
Yeah,
it.
I'll jump in.
Oh, cool. Hi.
So let me see if I can share video. Here it is. Okay. So yeah, the goal is just to kick off a bit of a conversation in this group around around resource locks. I think that there's been a lot of productive conversation around standardization of intents, and Josh sort of asked me to jump in and start talking about resource locks. And I think it'll be important to have sort of this group as orchestration of the conversation around this. You know, part of the motivation is we're seeing more teams experiment with this mechanism. And, you know, primary goal is just having common language, and then secondary is sort of work towards any sort of collective action, whether it is standardization or pushing free IPs or, you know, whatever else that that makes sense. So I just have a quick walkthrough here of sort of high level topic of resource locks and a few open questions at the end. So to set the context, so I'm Stefan. I'm founder at One Balance. Previously was co-founder at Flashbots, and have been sort of thinking about the role of MEV in UX for a bit of time, and that led me down the solver-based stuff and ultimately resource locks. So I founded One Balance along with my co-founders to sort of based on the thesis that resource locks are the best short-term solution for cross-chain UX. And what we've built is a toolkit for chain abstracted apps. And then we're also helping various different teams that are building interop solutions to support them with the implementation of resource locks within their system. I think resource locks have been around sort of as a topic now for about a year, but there's still a bit of sort of confusion around what they are and how they're perhaps distinct than intents. And so I think primary thing is sort of explore a definition of what is their role. And I think this sort of perspective is probably the best way that I found to explain it. Josh, can you give me a thumbs up to make sure you see my screen? Awesome. So everyone knows sort of the classical bridge, which is you deposit on an escrow on the source chain, you wait for finality, then the bridge admin sort of notices that finality, and then they mint the assets on a destination chain, or they pass the message to the destination chain that gets included, and then the user can do stuff on the destination chain. You know, the critical path there, everyone knows source chain finality plus destination chain inclusion is sort of too slow and like the source of all the fragmentation problem that we're looking to solve in this group. Intent bridge, you know, the innovation is you can actually get the solver to eat the finality risk and fund some capital through their inventory on the destination chain. And so the way that these intent bridges are sort of implemented today, you still send a transaction on the source chain, you wait for the inclusion, but not the finality. And then the solver goes and fronts the capital on the destination chain. And then you have a settlement mechanism off the critical path. And so your new critical path is source chain inclusion, routing, and destination chain inclusion, which significant UX improvement already. And then this is where, you know, further improvement upon this comes resource locks. And so just called it fast intent bridging, but you can have a lock provider, a resource lock provider, remove the double spend and finality risk completely, as opposed to just shifting it to the solver. And that allows things like higher capacity on the solver side, easier spreading to other chains, etc. And it also reduces the critical path to be just lock verification, routing, and destination chain inclusion, where the first two things sort of occur off chain, and you only have the destination chain inclusion, which is on chain. Now, what's involved as part of resource lock is essentially to just say that your escrow step, which you have as a first step to the intent bridge, is happening ahead of time, and the user can do that deposit and spend it multiple different times. And so you have the verification and the routing, and then the destination chain inclusion before you can receive the assets. And then the rest of the flow is sort of exactly the same as you would do inside of the traditional sort of intent bridge design. So that's the justification of like why resource locks and why a lot of folks are getting more and more excited about it. Now, there's different types of resource lock, and sort of the design space, I'd say, over the course of the past 6 months has been increasingly explored, where you could sort of categorize it into two families. The first one is account-based locks, which you are sort of creating locks on all the assets that sit inside of the user account. And then the second one is escrow-based locks. So you have a separate smart contract that you deposit into, and you sequence the locks within that account. And then of the escrow-based lock solutions, I think two are sort of worth mentioning, which I think would be recognized by a few people. So there's the Compact and Magic Spend Plus Plus that I would sort of consider to be implementations of escrow-based locks. The important part is sort of the locking mechanism that's used is independent to the rest of the settlement mechanism, right? So they are both sort of just covering the top piece here of the sequence diagram, and then the rest is all the traditional intent flow. So long as these solver networks implement compatibility for resource locks, then it's sort of happy days, and you get the UX benefit across the ecosystem. So this begs, the question of like, what are challenges with resource locks that have been identified? And thank you to the people that sort of participated in the chat on Telegram. I just pulled those from there, but the two main ones that sort of been talked about. The first is that 7702 doesn't support SCA-based locking, and so unfortunately, the current implementation of 7702 allows the EOA to revoke a delegation at any time. And so the EOA retains sort of root control over the account, which means that you can't implement some kind of policies on the account that limit the revocation. But it would be possible to implement an EIP that does a different type of delegation than 7702, perhaps extends it, such that it allows policies such as time lock or multi-sigs as part of the revocation of the delegation. The sort of second issue that's been discussed is sort of a failure of or limitation of 1271 signature verification, which is a standard for verifying authorizations as part of smart contract account implementations. And the issue is that 1271 doesn't have any sort of semantics around how it can be a signature can be revoked. And so as part of the flow, a solver may believe that they hold a valid authentication, but it gets revoked as part of the execution. And so the solution space is essentially to push the authentication outside of the smart contract accounts into directly into the escrow as part of escrow locks, and also sort of some implications around ERC20 permits and how they're supported as part of account locks. So those are sort of problems are being actively talked about and sort of looking for mitigation. And I think the question that's relevant for the discussion here is, what should this group do about resource locks? Well, I think the first one is to make sure that whatever intent standard and settlement standards are developed are resource lock aware. And I'm going to give a bit of a hat tip to Kevin here for the message that you posted, because I think it really summarized well what is the role of an intent standard and what is the role of a settlement standard, and how we can make sure that all the solutions that we build remain interoperable with each other. So intent standard allows user to express a list of settlement vendors whose attestations they accept, the actual semantics of the intent, and a list of commitments resource lock vendors they're willing to lock their funds. Settlement standard verifies the settlement protocol conforms with the user's expressed intent on locking user funds. The commitment resource lock vendor is one of the vendors that the user supports, likely defined by our front end. And this vendor is expected to emit events to notify the solvers. And then on releasing user fund, the settlement vendor is one of the vendors that user allows, and that the attestations can be verified. So I think this sort of provides a very good high level sort of objective statement for what these standards can do, and avoid sort of the overlap in trying to put too much inside of an intent standard or too much inside of a settlement standard, as well as provide the context of where resource locks fit into the picture. Another thing that this group can do is to work on a draft of an EIP for a 7702 extension that has more advanced delegation rules. We have put together a proposal last summer around this and sort of a code reset opcode. And so I can show that. I think it's been showed in the group already. But that could be an additional path that we explore as a group. And otherwise, I think, up for discussion. If there's anything else that you guys think is worth discussion or working together on, it would be great to get your input. So yeah, any thoughts?
This is great. Thanks, Stefan. On the topic of smart contract accounts and 7702 having equivocation issues, I do think that standard would be awesome to refresh 7702 and make it equivocation compatible. In the interim, we should really work to build out good canonical auth registry. The plan with the compact, version 1 of the compact right now, is to introduce this notion of an emissary where you can assign an account specific to a family of resource locks that has the ability to speak on your behalf. Basically, if your signature isn't, your ECDSA SIG isn't valid, or your 1271 signature isn't valid, then it'll go ask the emissary and provide a callback. And that emissary ideally should be a singleton canonical auth registry where there's a time lock on updating your signer. And then we can do passkeys and smart contract based wallets and that kind of thing. So that is at least where we're sort of thinking right now. But ideally, we come up with something that is useful to whoever is trying to make these auth-based systems that are resistant to equivocation issues.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how much it makes sense for this to be a standalone registry versus be embedded as part of each vault solution.
Yeah, I feel like there's going to be enough variety in signature schemes and use cases there that you could envision, if someone's doing BLS, if someone's doing passkeys with SECP4 or 256R1, if you're doing multi-sig style, there's quite a bit of variability, and it would be really nice to be able to just set that once for each flavor and then have protocols dip into it. But yeah, the hope is that we can do it in a way that's generic enough, but yeah.
Makes sense.
But yeah, this is great.
Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I'm not sure if you guys can hear me okay, but it would be very nice to add all of these resources around resource logs on the official Interop repo as a new section, as if we want to continue having this in mind when developing further ERCs, etc. It'd be nice to have it there, and also have all the nomenclature and properties of resource logs as well in one place. Because I know there are multiple efforts. I've seen other projects doing something similar as well. So we want to try to aggregate all the information that we have in one place.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I mean, I'll share this in the group. I'm not sure who has right access to the repo, but I'll share it and we can get that reflected.
Awesome. Yeah, you should be able to create a PR easily into the repo. We can help you guide you through it.
There's one comment in the chat from Yoav. I don't know if you saw that, Stefan. By the time that we can merge an EIP for code reset, we'll hopefully have EIP 7701, which adds native AA.
Yeah. I think there was some debate in the chat about whether or not 7701 addresses the issue fully. But I would totally agree. We may not need a different delegation model if we can get native A.
Awesome. Well, this is great. Thank you. Maybe let's keep going just to get through the rest of the agenda. Thanks so much.
You.
Cool. Next up, message passing.
So yeah, I don't really have much of an update on the message passing group, but the status is that, so previously we have kind of worked through these properties that we all agreed on in Denver that we think this message passing ERC should have. And so, yeah, and so the next step is to actually kind of move forward with this ERC. So for the, because we want to, kind of for the sake of time, ERC 7786 is the very likely contender right now. And so we are, given these properties that we agreed on, we are going to look at 7786 and see what specifically on that, if anything, needs to be changed, with the plan being to push 7786 forward as the message passing standard. So yeah, that's the status. I think right now, the biggest thing that we're working on is like the proper gas abstraction. So 7786 does have gaps, accounts for gas abstraction, but since it's such a large part of message passing is being able to pay for gas, we want to make sure that it's a very robust and user-friendly gas abstraction protocol. So yeah, that's kind of the status.
Awesome. Thank you. Any questions? Cool. Okay. Well, thanks for the quick update. We can keep moving along. Next up, Open Intents Framework. Is Pedro here?
Yes, thank you, Josh.
There you are.
So I'm Pedro from Open Zeppelin. I'm going to give a brief update on the Open Intents Framework. For those who don't know, the Open Intents Framework was created by Hyperlane and builds on the standardization work pioneered by Across with 7683. It aims to provide a production-ready stack that lets app chains and rollups instantly plug into the intents market, enabling like seamless cross-chain interactions. So what we're doing now is we're teaming up with the Ethereum Foundation, DeFi Wonderland, DeFi Across, Hyperlane, Bootnode, Hashi, and multiple layer twos to define a roadmap that will bring the OIF to production-ready maturity, be fully featured and widely adopted. The roadmap is still being finalized, but once we have a dedicated team working on this, we'll share it with the community and welcome your feedback. For now, like what I can say is some of the key goals with the OIF are to unify Ethereum, including small rollups and app chains, to standardize and modularize intents for a thriving cross-chain app developer ecosystem. We believe in the same way that ERC20 allowed DeFi to exist. Like there were tokens already before ERC20, right? But thanks to like this common interface, DeFi was born, and we think the same is going to be true for intents, right? Like there are many intent protocols that already exist and work, but we need to standardize how intents work for like a real application industry to emerge. And then we also want to make like the broader intents market more efficient around blockchains. We also want to do some work on auctions for like intent-based swaps and more things. Some of the areas of focus for our work, like to get to these goals, are going to be further defining and extending ERC 7683 with further definition and structure. We want to create an open source filler implementation that handles rebalancing, settlement, and other things. We want to create like modular settlement options with escrows, with resource locks. Stefan, I would like to have a conversation with you this week or next week. And also like multiple settlement authorities. We also want to make like an SDK and UI components to build with intents. And we're also thinking about intent-based account abstraction with like EIP 7702 and 437. I think I covered everything. Yeah, that's it. Thank you, Josh.
Yeah, of course. And I just wanted to add, yeah, thank you, Open Zeppelin, and everyone else who's being involved in this. I'm excited to have LeFi team, along with some of the earlier contributors, like Pedro mentioned, Hyperlane. I guess just really quickly from my perspective, the OIF started as something that a group had pushed together, but as a very initial implementation. And I think the value in some ways was not just the initial implementation, but as sort of the Schelling point to organize everyone else together and hopefully arrive at an even stronger sort of V2 or official V1 version of this framework. So yeah, I wouldn't over-index on what was pushed out so far, which was great. But I think we all sort of have, over the past month or so, through discussions, realized and learned how we can make things even better. So yeah, really excited to have everyone help us to get there.
Yeah, and I want to add, I realized from listening to Stefan speak that a lot of the things One Balance is doing might overlap with what we're doing. We might have like a lot of common components. So Stefan, again, like I would love to meet with you and discuss this. Thank you.
Cool. And I guess the last thing, I think Pedro and your team also working on a roadmap for the OIF that maybe we'll be able to share in the next week or two, whenever you're ready.
Yes, absolutely.
Cool. So we'll make sure to share that with the group. And of course, anyone that has feedback on the roadmap for the OIF, feedback is welcome. Cool. No questions. We can move on to the next. I think we have an update from Wonderland on interoperable addresses, ERC, and the interoperable wallet that we will be working on.
Yes, let me share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yep, perfect.
Great. So hello everybody, I'm Titi from Wonderland and I'm leading the interoperable wallet project. I'm going to go through our roadmap. So first, why the need of creating this wallet? We need to showcase in practice how our standards will be implemented. To do so, we're going to focus on an experimental wallet development on testnet, which will be done on top of Enviro codebase. And over here, you can find some of the reasons we decided to fork Enviro. Aside from this, we will build a wallet agnostic SDK for any wallet to easily implement these features. A little disclaimer, our processes go by first doing an idea draft, which is basically this roadmap with rough estimates. And before starting coding, we do a tech design where we dig deeper in the implementation details and needs where we are able to provide more precise estimates. So, okay, moving into the milestones. We have divided it in two phases. The first one is this experimental prototype, and as mentioned here, the goal is to create a minimal but functional wallet that demonstrates interoperable addressing and intent-based cross-chain transfers. The first step is to fork Enviro, create UI and UX flow designs for it, build these UI components, and implement serialization to transform human-readable addresses to machine-readable. It's important to know that on this initial step, we will work with raw address, leaving the name resolving for a future milestone. This aligns with the recent updates on our approach on interoperable address standard, where we will split current ERC 7828 efforts into parts. New ERC focus only on binary representation, keeping 7828 for naming standards. This will allow each user group as wallets and intents provider to focus on the relevant parts. So continuing with the wallet milestones, over here, we will translate these efforts into the wallet agnostic SDK as mentioned before. And once address formatting and serialization is resolved, we'll move to the next step of functional implementations, where we will develop an adapter interface matching the Open Intents Framework standard and develop intent-based transfers. So again, as mentioned before, this will be an experimental wallet on testnet where we will only aim to showcase the mechanisms. Of course, everything related to the flows and UI designs with transfer errors handling will be built on this step. And finally, for this phase one, all these efforts will be, over here, will be translated to the wallet agnostic SDK. So any questions so far? We'll take that as a no. And lastly, for the later phase 2, we will work on adding privacy features where we will evaluate different protocols compatibility, like Railgun and Oxfam, and also payment request features to improve the UX as much as possible. At the end, you can find some of the definition of terms for this phase 2. And if you have any questions or feedback, feel free to reach out. We are more than open to listen to your thoughts on it.
Awesome. Thank you, Titi. Anything else from your side that you wanted to share?
No, we're good.
Cool. So yeah, I guess just to, as one quick follow-up thought. So this wasn't, I guess, clear in a previous call, but announcing it here that yes, the wallet that we are forking is the Ambire wallet. I can drop a link in the chat. Excited to move forward with this with the Wonderland team and other contributors that will be joining the effort soon. If anyone has questions, wants to get involved, yeah, just DM me or drop a message in the group. Cool. Okay. Well then, last up, a late addition to the agenda. Georgios wanted to share a few things on the Interop marketplace.
Yeah, thanks, Josh. Let me share the screen. Okay. No. Still not visible, right?
Not yet. We see something. We see.
Yeah, I see it.
Okay. Yep.
Okay. Now you see the
I got it
presentation.
now. Yep.
Oh, perfect. All right. So what's the Ethereum Interop marketplace? That idea was born at Denver, the offsite, in the Intents group. So the people there, after a couple of discussions, made it up that actually it's a good idea to start working on some sort of marketplace. So essentially kind of a shared platform for change protocols and solvers. So what kind of problem this is solving, right? So we identified that after, again, lots of people in the room, there are chains, there are Interop providers, there are solvers. There's problem for Interop for change on day one, especially, and non-mature ecosystems, non-mature L2s. So there's no unified resource for change, basically, to understand and see their options. What kind of cross-chain token starters are there? What kind of bridge protocols? What kind of intent protocols? And there is no really, and all these discussions are happening actually ad hoc, right? Word of mouth. They're trying. So if you're launching a new rollup, you're basically, trying to figure out to whom do you need to talk to. And on the other side, I think this was initially also mentioned by the LeFi team, right? That they want to support as many changes as possible on day one, but they don't really have enough information, right? Like simple stuff like the chain ID, gas tokens, and stuff like that. So, right. These are the main problems that we'll try to solve. There are a couple of ideas, initial ideas, of course. I'm just mentioning here for the first time, so we can start getting feedback. But The main stuff that everybody seemed to agree so far is like this kind of registration concept, like announcing themselves. So new L2s just announcing, hey, here I exist, kind of a single source of truth for chain directory, but also for interop protocols, aggregators, and of course solvers, right? There's also the same problem in a sense for intent protocols and solvers. They don't really know where and how they can provide the services. So you can think of it of a kind of a matchmaking platform in a sense for these three types of projects, right? Why this actually matters? Like we believe in the end of the day, an accelerated go-to-market for chains, just a more efficient onboarding for aggregators, bridge protocols, and solvers, and just a more efficient cross-chain ecosystem in general. So if you guys are interested to get involved or support this, please reach out in the group. And that's a very early stage idea, as mentioned. So feedback is welcomed, and let me know.
Awesome. Thank you, Georgios. If people have feedback, want to get more involved, where should they reach out to you? Just on Telegram? You're muted if you're talking, but yeah, Georgios is also in the Telegram group. Cool. Okay. Well, we got through the agenda, did it pretty quick. Can end early then. If any last questions, thoughts? Otherwise,
I have a question. So earlier it was said that we may get 7701 merged at some point. So it sounded like before there wasn't a path to get this merged, and now maybe there is. And when we say native account abstraction, like what does that actually mean? Like any EOA interacting with a contract that implements 7701 would get like account abstraction features, or maybe someone else can explain it better?
I can. So no, it has nothing to do with EOA. EOA will always remain an EOA. There's no real way to make it full account abstraction because of this ECDSA key. Even if you could use something like our past proposal for code reset, you don't fully solve the problem because of existing permits and also issues with the other chains where you did not revoke the ECDSA key. So 7701 is full account abstraction, meaning that the address you are using has a validation function as an EVM code section, as an EOF code section. So the validation actually is code, and there is no ECDSA key to begin with. And this, of course, makes it easier to also do things like resource locks because there is no master key that could bypass it.
Okay, and this is for a new address or a contract being deployed at an address, or like what's the migration path for an existing user?
Oh, it's a new it has to be a new address. If the
Okay.
I mean it can also be an existing address that you migrate from, for example, ERC 4037. If you have a proxy, if you have an account that is a proxy using 4037, which is a common case, you'll be able to migrate this to 7701, but you won't be able to migrate an EOA to full account abstraction because, again, there are problems that I don't think that could be solved or could be fully solved with the ECDSA key.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, okay, that supplements my understanding of 7701. I think the code reset path is the only one that sort of offers a way to upgrade an EOA into the smart account capabilities that also supports the resource locks. But yeah, the sort of security concerns that were mentioned by Yoav around permits do remain. So there was discussion in the group about the number of tokens that have native permit on top of the ERC20 is like somewhat limited, and those tokens that have it but are like very well used, like Circle and USDT, are all upgradable tokens. And so there are other ways of sort of mitigating those things if the community believes that that an upgrade EIP is a valuable thing to have.
Yeah, I still think a code reset would have been useful, and I wish we could have gotten it into 7702 to begin with. But it's not. But it's not going to make it a full account abstraction proposal, because permit is just one example. There are other issues such as I mean, your old private key remains important because it could be used for grabbing your address on other chains, or if you ever sign something for another chain, or anything that uses EC recover on the same chain, which permit is one example, but is not the only one. So it's if you're migrating an account, it's going to stay somewhat insecure, somewhat dependent on the old private key. There's no way to fully rotate the key.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But it will still be useful for resource locks. Yeah, that I agree, and that's a primary reason why I still would like to have this change to 7702.
Cool. All right. Well, maybe we can end things there. Thanks all for joining.